Welcome back. I'm Michelle Meyer-Shipp, CEO of Dress for Success Worldwide, the leading global nonprofit employment resource for women. 60% of the women we serve identify as people of color, 40% are single mothers, and nearly 50% live below the poverty line. This is the second episode of our 5-part series called Power Shift. Power Shift explores the qualities that people rely on to help them triumph over the greatest challenges in the most challenging of times. This includes agency, power, resilience, courage, and community. This week's conversation brings together a dear respected friend and colleague, Elizabeth Nieto, the global head of equity and impact at Spotify. Elizabeth is joined by Dress for Success Global Ambassador, Star Arbouin, from Brookhaven, New York. These powerhouse women will speak about their definitions and experiences around power in their careers and their lives, and whether its definition has evolved for them over the years. So let's get started.
The Power Shift podcast series is sponsored by our generous friends at Chart Industries, who are also participating in the Your Hour, Her Power campaign. Thank you so much for your support.
Hi, Star. It is so exciting to be here with you today, having this conversation. I've read your history, and you have a very interesting history of resilience and grit. And what better than be talking to someone who's a global ambassador for Dress for Success about that, and also power, because you and I get to talk about power.
I'm excited to be here talking to you as well. Nice to meet you. I have also read your bio, and you are amazing. You are power walking around. I was very excited to meet you, and I'm excited for this conversation as well.
Thank you for saying that. I know we have some questions to follow, but even when you say that to me, I felt so uncomfortable. I grew up in an environment where talking about power, especially for women, or ambition was a no-no. It was actually be seen as someone who was manipulative and not someone that would do good with power. And if you think about the definition of power, that it's really this ability to direct or influence others, it's as if power was seen as influences others to do bad instead of influencing others to do good. And it took many, many years in my career to realize that power, if used for good, was a good thing, and that women deserve and were allowed to have power, and call that out. But still, there's that moment that I go like, I feel uncomfortable. What about you? What is power for you?
When I really grasped the hold of power in my first instance, it was in the backdrop of the situations that I was going through that made me feel powerless. And there had been many days that I felt like I had no power. Circumstances had made me feel like I couldn't control anything going on around me. And then I put things into perspective one day, and I said to myself, you know something? Yes, these things happen. I was realistic with my emotions. I cried about it, and I had to talk to myself. When I had given myself this speech, I said, yes, these things happen, but you have the power now to get up and do something about where you're going next. And I've had a few instances of that in my life. And I think after the first time, putting power in perspective, it becomes easier every other time that something happens to try to make you feel powerless. And then you realize that, you know what, I do have the power to change my outcome and to redirect my life going forward.
When you're saying that, it makes me think about owning power also is allowing yourself to take risks and know that you can fail through those, but being in the driving seat of those risks. And then if we fail, what are we going to turn to, and how are we going to be doing that? So you can't really have power, especially for people like us, unless you're willing to take risks and unless you're willing to make mistakes. And that in itself made you a little bit uncomfortable and maybe powerless. But if you are intentional in the way that you think about these risks that you're taking and owning those decisions, that can be very invigorating.
Yes. And I like that you use the word intentional, because that right there speaks of power. I would say the essence. You really put into perspective and you take control of your situation. And again, you can always have another circumstance that tries to come again. But as you get better, as you really become intentional, whatever your goals are, whatever your dreams are, whatever, you be intentional about how I'm going to achieve that, and what are the obstacles, and what are the resources that I can get to help me to reach my goals. And sometimes you may not have the power. And that's when you reach out to someone or some resource that does have the power to help you to achieve your goals and your dreams. Through the donations that people give for Dress for Success, it helps to give women the resources that they need in order to achieve their goals and their dreams. So Your Hour, Her Power is an excellent resource for women, the donations that people give to Dress for Success.
You know what I love? Dress for Success. And of course, Your Hour, Her Power. It's a very important campaign. But what I had found of other organizations that actually Dress for Success had figured out how to do very well is this ecosystem of support. So what you may need start now may be different in 3 years, but when one of your colleagues may need something now, it's different. So trying to understand how to support women where they are and where they want to go, and using also their power to figure out that opportunity. I think it's very exciting to see an organization that has evolved from the very first, it was really about what you wear to go to work, to all the different support systems that the organization is now given, and that they're engaging other women like me that have been able to achieve some success to engage, because what it may look like success now, it was not like that many decades ago. So trying to connect in the difficulties that each of us have had, and also looking at the future as a potential for success, is what matters. And it matters to the organization, and clearly it matters to all of us that are engaged with it.
Yes, I agree. The evolution of Dress for Success, it is more than just clothing. It's more than just that interview. For those that have gotten the job and have gotten the interview, it really inspires women to continue to want to grow with other programs that we have, within Dress for Success. And it nurtures a sense of your desire to grow and evolve from that point where you once needed an interview outfit to now wanting to start your own organization to continue to help, and through networking and partnering with so many different other entities and people that are partnering with the vision of Dress for Success.
Do you remember, going back to our conversation on power, a moment or an experience where you said, I'm now owning my power, as you said before that you did, but was there anything that triggered it, or can you think of what was the time where you said, yeah, I'm not powerless anymore, I'm powerful, and this is how I'm going to do it?
When I first had my children, being a single mom, I didn't have the help, but I also wanted to be a stay-at-home mom with my children. I didn't want to miss those monumental moments. And I was working at tutor time at one point. I was working for a child care center, and my children were also in attendance. And at the time, I was on public assistance, in which I was receiving help from the government to pay for my child care. And one day I got a glimpse at what they were paying for my children to attend. And I said to myself, you know something? I could do the same thing at home, bring work at home, be able to raise my children and have an income, and come off of public assistance with the amount that they were paying for just my children. And from that moment on, I began the process. I searched for, the resources of, how would I get this started? With that, I was able to come off of public assistance because I owned that moment. And I said, it doesn't have to be that I have to miss my children's first monumental steps or the things that I wanted to see that every parent wants to see when their children are growing.
So who helped you there? Because it's not easy to set up a business, to get all the certifications. I mean, this is a very regulated industry, the childcare industry, but it's good that it's regulated, but it requires a lot of support.
Well, you know something, in our state, the same organization that refers you to childcare when you're looking for an organization to babysit your children is the same organization that also will license or register your business. And so I happened to do the research and I called up and asked, what is the process? And, you know, they gave me the steps and what I needed to do. And it was history from there.
Do you still have that business?
No, that was ended with the state cuts and Hurricane Sandy finished it off. And since I lost that business, you know, it did take some time because that was a moment of feeling like I was powerless. And then once I healed emotionally, I said, you know what? It happened. Now it's time again. And so I'm trying to open up a whole different business.
Good. But you know what is interesting? That you went back into powerless. And I think that these cycles of power, there are moments where we're in control. We can navigate whatever it's in front of us. And there are moments where you still go back, and having that resilience and that grit is what probably allow you to, again, get into the next endeavor and the excitement of that.
What about you? How does power affect your life?
So as I started, it took me some time to figure out that power was good. And then the way that I define now is more around impact. So how do I use my power to have positive impact in the places where I work or the organizations that I support, and even to looking at what is my legacy, knowing that there's a lot of things that still can be done. And I have found the perfect roles where I can still work in a corporation and I get to do wonderful work for a lot of either the non-for-profit or in our case at Spotify, with the creators, we have very strong teams that are constantly looking at what are the opportunities to use our power, our voices to contribute to the societies where we work. So it's a perfect combination between my purpose in life, to using my power for good and having a positive impact, and then having a job that allows me to do that. And in the case, as I look at my career, I was able to continue to grow. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Argentina. So I have seen, what are the things that you can do even in a small environment, in a bigger environment, at a global reach, and always trying to challenge myself to do more things. One of the things that I've seen how my power is of value is when I work with non-for-profit organizations, and I'm on the board of a couple of non-for-profits, all dedicated to improve the opportunities for underserved communities around education. And that's where I see that we're using the resources that we have, again, calling that the power, to do things that are important to us. And that's what keeps me going.
What does your journey look like? Like, how did you get to where you are now?
I wish that I could say that I was so clear in the way that I set up my path. I don't think that any of us, some, but not me. I studied educational sciences. I wanted to be a teacher. I ended up realizing that at the time in Argentina, I wanted to be a teacher and a researcher. Those jobs didn't pay that much. So if I wanted to do research, I needed to get a corporate job. So I started in a training organization and did that for a couple of years. I moved from Argentina to have a regional job for Latin America, doing learning and development. And then decided that I needed to move out of Latin America, because if not, I was going to always be an expert in Latin America. And while there's a lot of wonderful things to do, I wanted to do a little bit more. So I moved to another learning role that was a global role that allowed me to do a lot of traveling and get to learn a lot about different cultures. And I love that learning of different cultures that brought me actually to think about diversity. And diversity, both in the US sense of the word, and the way that we think of that in the US, but also globally, who are the underrepresented communities that do not have access to resources. And that's how I ended up doing work in diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And now the responsibilities that I have now includes diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, includes social impact, media responsibility, what other companies will call ESG, sustainability, and climate action. So all these areas that are personally of great interest, and then finding a company that cares about those. So where you have the perfect alignment between your own values, your own purpose, and what the company wants to do. So that's how I ended up. In the meantime, I got married, I had a daughter, I got divorced, I was a single mother. I didn't figure out how I was going to do it, but look at you had more than one child and you figure it out. I fell in love, remarried, have another child. So I'm still the mother of a senior son and an adult daughter. So working through college, application, and all those wonderful things that we parents, if we can guide our children to do.
That is a beautiful journey. Who in your life has been a powerful example to you?
So I've been thinking about this for the last couple of days, and you try to find someone that will be very exciting. Everybody will know about that, or you go like, well, my mom really did it well. Again, single mom in the 60s in Argentina, where that was not well seen. But just a flash of this journalist. Her name was Magdalena Ruiz Guiñazú. So she was from Argentina. And I remember when I left Argentina, I kept on listening to her shows, and she went from being, I would say, a journalist to be more of a power that stood up to some of the bad things that happened in Argentina and used the resources that she had from around the world. And when I thought about someone that stood up to power with a lot of power herself and supported some of the very important organizations that in Argentina work against the brutality created by the dictatorial regime. Actually, there's a movie now in the Oscars called Argentina 1985 that talks about that. And I think that that's why I remember how you use your voice and how you can use your power, and it gets represented in different ways. So I was thinking about her when we thought about the powerful women. And what about you?
Well, there are a few. And yeah, of course, like you said too, just, my mom also was a strong woman, and she actually I'm one of 7.
Can't imagine how that works.
Yeah, so she's powerful.
Sometimes we end up taking risks or opportunities without knowing we're going to be able to succeed. And that journey in itself is giving us an opportunity to gain our power and engage with that. So,
yes. How do you look at power differently as your life has evolved?
So not only personally, I do believe that when I was growing up, there were very few role models. So what we'll call women in power, women either in corporate roles or in public roles or in government. So we had no role models. I mean, I could not even think about who would be someone with power in that sense of ability to influence others. And so if I think about your generation or my daughter's generation, you have so many examples of women that represented us and have used their power to do good, but also to do big. And it is exciting. Still, there are not as many women, as Fortune 100 CEO. There's still very few. Those jobs are very difficult, and not difficult because women could not do them. It's because it requires a lot of support from other people to help you get to those roles. So we still have an opportunity there, but there are more than there were, when I was growing up. So I've seen the power. If we think about prime ministers and women in those roles today all around the world, you see also a generation of young women, not just old women. And that is important to see that younger women are getting access to power and using that. So that's how I see that changing. What about you?
Power has evolved for me through my life. When we were growing up, we had more of a strict upbringing than children in this generation. We spoke when we were spoken to, and we stayed in a line. The ducks were in the row.
And if you were one of 7, of course.
Oh, yeah. And it's understandable. We had to be in a row because how else can you help guide 7? I only had 3. So my mom, she's a superhero. When I moved out of home, when I graduated high school and I went into college, that was like a first taste of, okay, now I'm in the power seat. What direction will I go in and what will I experience? Who will I meet? And what are the things that I will do? And, some of the things I'll encounter. It was a very interesting time in my life because prior to that, like I said, I only did what mommy said to do, but now, and at this point, I'm like, okay, so the possibilities are endless. Then there were my other instances again, where my life was just in a shambles and then just really coming to realizing that, wait, though things have happened, I have the power to change what happens next. We all get knocked down, but the key is you don't just stay there. You don't just lay there. You cry it out. And when you're done crying, you get up and you do something next. What's next?
I was going to ask you, what should be our pearls of wisdom? And you have one there just to share with the audience, your own pearls of wisdom. Know that you have to cry. It's okay. And yes. I think that if I look back, that's also one of the ways we were not supposed to be crying before. You were supposed to, if you were strong, we had to be strong. And now we're allowed to cry for a little bit and then use that power to reveal ourselves. So, it has been amazing talking to you. And I really appreciate you sharing your stuff. And I hope that between the two of us, we can have some ideas for some other people to think about their own power and what they can do with them. And continue to grow, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, that we use our power to continue to grow and to support others in that growth.
Likewise, it's an honor to have had this conversation with you. And I hope to someday see you in person.
Absolutely. We'll make, Spotify is a Swedish company. So instead of just getting together for coffee, we get together for a fika, and that's coffee and a little sweet thing. So we'll make a point of you and I going out for a fika.
That's great. I look forward to it. It's a pleasure meeting you and talking with you. Thank you.
5-star.
Bye, Elizabeth.
I don't know about you, but I've heard a lot of discussions about power, and that was truly unique. I am not surprised, of course, given these 2 amazing women's journeys and perspectives. Elizabeth and Star truly exemplify the core of our campaign, which is all about a woman's power when she is given the resources she needs to overcome any obstacle or challenge that stands in her way. That's what Dress for Success is all about. Stay tuned for next week's episode, which will focus on the concept of community. To learn more about our global campaign running through the month of March, please visit yourhourherpower.org. Thank you.